Thank you, Mr. Shue. By the way, just to let everybody know, Mr. Shue served as Douglas County Clerk since 2005. His name is on the ballot too. He is also unopposed this year. Now let us begin with our 2-minute candidate introductions. We will start with District Attorney Charles Branson.
I guess somebody's always going to go first. Well, first, thank you for having us here this evening. It's very special to always be able to come out and talk with people in the community and people out in the county about what's going on. I have the good fortune of being unopposed this cycle. I'd probably just like to update you briefly on the office. Obviously, I've been the district attorney since 2005. It's a position I've very much enjoyed. The relationships that I've gained out of this position are amazing, and the people representing you in the county are just pretty spectacular folks. One of the things about the district attorney's office, a lot of people don't realize, besides just doing the criminal matters that you think of us from day to day, I always like to take an opportunity to remind people of other things that we do. Not only do we do the criminal filings, we also do the juvenile offender filings for the entire county. Child needed care cases, anytime there's a child that's subject to abuse or neglect, those cases all come to our office. Traffic cases, of course, and then some things that we really don't like to talk about a lot are care and treatment cases. Anytime somebody's in a mental health crisis, they're unable to care for themselves or make healthcare decisions or endanger themselves or others, those cases also all come through our office. So we do a lot of different varied work for the county, and we're proud to do that work, and very pleased to be here tonight to hopefully answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branson. Next up, Douglas County Sheriff Ken McGovern. Sheriff.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Great to see all of you out here. Sheriff Ken McGovern, and I've been in law enforcement 35 years. And still enjoying what I'm doing. We have a lot of great staff. For you that don't know, staff of 150. 96 of those work in the Corrections Center out there on East 25th Street. One of our big issues right now is in law enforcement is perception of law enforcement, and we're trying to reiterate to our folks the good things that we do and make sure that we're responsible to the public that we serve. Currently, we're at 245 individuals in our custody. For the jail that we have houses 186 inmates. So we currently are farming some of these inmates out to surrounding counties. We're also looking right now, struggling getting staff or people out in the community to join our staff. It usually takes about 3 months to hire somebody in and then 3 months to train them. And so right now we're really pushing out in the community, trying to find people who want to come to work for us, both male, female. Anybody that wants the application, knock on the door and I'll bring you one. So, all you young kids in the back, you're ready because I'm coming looking. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Moving on to the 2nd District County Commissioner race. First up is independent candidate Jesse Brinson Jr. Mr. Brinson.
Yes, sir. Like I said, my name is Jesse Brinson. I am originally from Houston, Texas. Was chasing my dream of playing NFL football, and KU was the only out-of-state school that accepted my application, and the most glamorous one, so that's why I ended up here in Kansas. I've been here the last 15 years. I'm married. Married 11 years. My wife, Tori, was from Emporia, just north of Emporia. We have 3 biological kids, and 4 older foster kids who are out on their own, like their own tails. So our house is not overcrowded. I work full-time for Cause Greatest Ministries. I'm a youth minister, and that's what I've been doing the last 12 years, really focusing on how to improve not only families, but our school by serving the local school district, mentoring, tutoring, coaching, and trying to bring positive change in our community. I've been asked multiple times why this, why go after the county commission and be a candidate representing a large body of people. I felt it was the next step. I'm not after a career in politics, but definitely in the people and how to bring about resources that would improve and better people's lives. So that's why I'm taking this step. That's my goal. If I'm chosen to be the representative for District 2 County Commission. So.
Thank you, sir. Next up, County Commissioner Nancy Feldman. Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Nancy Feldman. I am so pleased to be here tonight. Thank you, Becky and everyone else for setting this forum up. It's great to be able to hear everyone's voices. And I welcome Jesse to the political world. They made my race a lot more interesting. And it's a good thing because it elevates the issues and it gets us out, and it's important for you all to hear what's going on in the county, which oftentimes is a race that people don't even pay attention to. We are so under the radar that some folks don't even know there's a county commission, but we touch your lives in some ways far more intimately and more impactfully than many of the offices up here from day to day. So I was born and raised in Lawrence. I graduated from Lawrence High and KU with a nursing degree. Was in Nashville for a while where my husband did a residency, and there I changed from nursing to Master of Divinity, so I'm an ordained Presbyterian minister. I worked in a couple of the churches in Lawrence. But about 10 or 11 years ago, I got involved in a neighborhood issue. My family moved out to a farm north of North Lawrence in Grant Township. And that got me involved in a big land use issue. It was industrialization versus saving some prime agricultural farmland. And from that organization effort, I ended up being interested in the county commission and have served now my second term and hoping for a third. Have enjoyed this more than any other job I've ever had. It takes, for me at least, as a full-time job. But absolutely one of the best I've had, and I'm really proud to serve you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we move on to the 42nd House District candidates. First up is Democrat Kara Reed. Councilwoman.
Hi, thank you. First of all, my name is Kara Reed. I'm running for the 42nd House District. I want to say thank you to Game On, to the Eudora Chamber of Commerce, and to Eudora Convention Visitors Bureau, also to the middle school for having us here, and also everybody who came out today to hear what we have to say. So I am running for office because we deserve better. 3 months into the fiscal year, we are already $60 million in the hole in this state. I don't have a crystal ball to tell me how that's going to pan out, but if the past is any indication, that means there are going to be further cuts to early childhood education, to higher education, to mental health services, to senior services, and to our roads and infrastructure. And we deserve better. I also have a bio. All of my information is online, and I would encourage you to look at my website for that. I'd be happy to tell you afterwards. But I want to take this moment to address something else. I was told the other day that there didn't seem to be much difference between my opponent and I. I would like to point out what those differences are. First of all, I am the moderate in this race. My opponent has used the word conservative or true conservative on his website, on his Facebook page, on all of his literature and his mailers. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but what I do know is that there's another gentleman in the state that identifies as a conservative, and that is Sam Brownback. In my opinion, we do not need someone who will take us further down this destructive road. Secondly, I have experience as an elected official. I am on the Tonganoxie City Council, and I have an impeccable record of being accessible and responsive. I have had to make difficult policy decisions and difficult budget decisions during a recession, and we have managed to do that without cutting services to our community. My opponent handled a difficult budget by cutting one quarter of his workforce, his teachers. I'm asking for the opportunity to earn
We
your
need to
vote.
move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is our challenger, Republican Jim Carlson. Ken.
Thank you, John. I'm Jim Carlson, also running for the 42nd District. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight, and also Game On and the school system and the chamber for having us. I'm a lifelong Kansan. I grew up on a dairy farm. I went to Vietnam. I served the Army. I was awarded the Bronze Star while serving in Vietnam. I got a bachelor's and master's degrees in education from Pittsburgh State University and a PhD from the University of Kansas. I'm an adjunct professor with Baker University and I teach school finance. You know, the comments that Kara made are rather intriguing. She has served 3 years on the city council of Tonganoxie. You know, I don't know where she's getting her facts that I balanced the budget by cutting a quarter of the teachers, which is totally false. She has no clue what that means. But also, I did balance the budget during the recession. There were reductions, but it wasn't a quarter of the teachers. We tightened our belts. We did what we had to do. I also was able to work with the $20 million budget in the school district to make ends meet. I brought in revenue and I balanced the budget. My reason for running is a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think Kansas has lost its luster. The school system, the transportation, and many of the other facets that we've grown to know and grown to accept. I am a fiscal true conservative. Yes, I am a fiscally true conservative. I'm pro-life. My opponent is pro-choice. She is endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I'm endorsed by Kansas for Life.
Thank you, sir. Our final candidate tonight, Democratic State Senator Tom Holland. Senator.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I'm State Senator Tom Holland. Thank you for attending this evening's forum. I first want to thank very much the Game On for Kansas Schools for sponsoring this forum. I think it's extremely important that you, the citizens, get to hear the positions of those who would seek to represent your interests in Topeka. I also want to thank you, the residents of the 3rd State Senate District, for allowing me to serve as your state senator these past 8 years. I very much consider it an honor that you've given me that cherished duty. A little bit about my background. I'm 55 years old. I've been married. My wife Barbara for 35 years. We have 4 adult grown children. They have all attended and graduated from Kansas public schools. I'm also a small business owner. Our company, Holland Technologies, has been making payroll since 1994. My reason for getting involved in Kansas politics is a very simple one. I have concerns based upon seeing what we're requiring in children's classrooms that we have legislators not interested in funding public education. And so that's something that I want to correct when I got the opportunity to go and serve in Topeka, because I want to see all Kansas receive a quality education. This November, there are 2 individuals running for the 3rd State Senate District with very different political philosophies. My opponent, Ms. Echo Van Meteren, is married to Sam Brownback's top political consultant. As reported by the Orange Journal World, she supports Sam Brownback's failed tax policies and also supports vouchers for private schools. With her, you're only going to get more of the same delusional happy talk coming from Governor Brownback as regards to disastrous tax policies, while we see our public schools, higher education system, and highway system slowly erode away. Now, I want you to ask yourself this question. Does Kansas really need yet another Sam Brownback ally in the Kansas Senate who only cares about serving the needs of Sam's special wealthy interests? Or do we still want someone who is fair-minded and independent, a person who will be representing the interests of all Kansans, particularly our working families and seniors?
Thank you, Senator. We have to move on. We now begin the first round of questions for our county officials. I'll start with DA Charles Branson. Mr. Branson, the U.S. Justice Department has identified Kansas as an originating state for human trafficking. What should be done in Douglas County to help curb this criminal trend?
Well, it's very disturbing for us to be thought of as an originating state for human trafficking. There's 2 types of human trafficking that we're really talking about here. There's labor trafficking and then there's sex trafficking. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in the midst of both those issues. It's become a national interest by the federal government, and it's also become a state interest by everybody from the governor's office to the AG's office to our local office. There are very serious things that go on with human trafficking in the labor and sex industry. One of the recent things that I've personally tried to do about human trafficking is actually with the help of our sheriff. We identified an issue here locally in Douglas County of sexual trafficking in a massage parlor. After a lengthy investigation, those people were brought into the legal system, prosecuted, and convicted. One of the things that we discovered while we were going through that process was this unregulated industry that the massage industry is. I recently proposed to the city of Lawrence to regulate that industry. We are one of a handful of states that do not regulate it statewide. Regulation in Kansas is left up to the local cities. There are several cities around the state that have adopted ordinances. And what really it's done for us is it's drove several of those operations to our front doorstep. Some of these operations, the people involved in this last investigation have actually been run out of Johnson County after they enacted similar local ordinances regulating the massage industry. And I think it's something we need to seriously take a look at here locally, and more importantly, we probably should be looking at it on a statewide basis.
Thank you, sir. Sheriff. I've always wanted to say that for you. Sheriff, throughout the United States, there is a growing tension between law enforcement and communities of color. What is Douglas County doing to ensure that it is both protecting its officers and ensuring that they are not unfairly targeting African Americans or other minorities?
One issue is part of the problem is officers fail to take the time to visit with their community. Whether you just drive out to somebody's house and stop and visit for 2 minutes, but those are little issues that officers need to remember to do, and we encourage that. One of the things that Douglas County has started is a criminal justice coordinating council and identifying issues and bringing in some of the officials within the county, but also outside community groups, and sitting down with each other and trying to have an open dialogue, conversations, and try to address some of the issues that come across in our criminal justice system. And it's kind of clogged up, but we're also trying to figure out how to unclog it and what we can do as a community to help solve problems within our community. I can see out here, some of these folks remember back in the 60s and 70s, and we had big issues back in the 60s and 70s, and that took a lot of talking to each other and opening up lines of communication. And I think we've kind of closed those, and now we reopen them again, become a better community, both within the state and model citizens for the whole nation. Thanks.
Thank you. And also, sincerely, Sheriff, thank you for your service as a law enforcement official here. Mr. Brinson, in your role as County Commissioner, please describe what an effective working relationship looks like between the County Commission and the City of Eudora, and what can you do to best represent the interests of Eudora residents?
One thing I want to go out there is being a voice for the people. I think it is the responsibility of any politician to be that voice and hear them. One thing I would like to commit to, or would commit to, is not only meeting with different townships, different neighborhood associations, and specifically for Eudora, but different people groups that are here in Eudora. And giving them my ear, because that would be my responsibility. The other thing I want to do is, there are all the neighborhood associations and the different people groups, but then also hearing from the commissioner of the city, the city mayor, and what their thoughts are. How can we better connect, work, network on bringing out what they are trying to accomplish in the city of Eudora. I think it's important that I don't come in with a, let's do this, let's do that, but really a mindset to say, let's bring the groups together, let's begin hearing from them, let's begin taking notes, and then hear some suggestions what you guys think, and going from that point. That's what I think.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Feldman, what is your position on the plans to expand the Douglas County Jail facility and the inclusion of expanded mental health services as part of that plan?
I'm really happy you asked me that question. I really am. The county commission, the current county commission has worked on proposed jail expansion for the last 3 years. We studied it hard at the request of the sheriff about 3 years ago, and even before that, we saw the trend coming. So for these last 3 years, we've learned that our jail is over capacity, and that directly impacts both the people who are inside the jail and the people who work there. When the jail was built almost 20 years ago, it was built at a time when very few women were in jail and very few folks with mental illness were in jail, because at that point the state had strong mental health systems in place, strong state hospitals, and there was strong social services, and women were not being jailed very often. Now women, we've gone back then from 6 to 9 women in jail to about 40 every day, 40 or more. The current capacity for women is about 2 dozen out there. So we have women who are being sent to other jails, far away from family, far away from the counselors, far away from home, and far away from the services that they in particular need that we offer at the county jail. Our reentry services are second to none. We're nationally recognized for all sorts of special services that help people be better when they get out of jail rather than worse, which is what our real mission is, to help folks in their worst moments, help them be better people when they get out, better citizens, and not come back to the county jail. There's not time enough to talk about the crisis center and the mental health issues, but I can just leave you with this thought, that every year now, this year and next year, we budgeted $1 million to pay for the cost of shipping our excess inmates out to other county jails. That's just for the money it costs to rent their bed for the night all year long.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now on to our House candidates. Councilwoman Reed. The use of local authorities to supplement K-12 public education revenues through local property taxes raises a statewide question of fairness and equity. Some districts want to remove the cap on the local option budget. Others argue no cap is constitutionally unfeasible and conflicts with the state's responsibility to provide equitable access to quality education. How do you think Kansas can reconcile these two positions?
Well, sorry about that. I believe that the quality of educational opportunities for all of our children in Kansas should not be based on zip code. I do support local school boards in making decisions for their communities. I think that decisions that are made at that level are best as they do understand what their communities need. I also believe that obviously equity and adequacy are an incredibly important part of our educational system. Without full funding of our schools, those cannot be enacted. Again, I do believe that the local option budget, equity is most important, and to allow extra monies from local districts to go to those schools causes some problems with equity.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, many Republicans are currently attempting to mount an anti-retention vote for 4 of the 7 justices on the Kansas Supreme Court. Do you believe the Kansas Supreme Court is upholding the Kansas Constitution or overstepping its constitutional authority when it comes to cases regarding the finance of public education, and why?
Regarding the retention of the judges, in the Kansas Constitution, Article 6 directly speaks to adequacy and equity. And as long as there is that stipulation in the Kansas Constitution, there's going to be litigation around school finance. Since the 1970s, there have been 7 school finance laws that have 7 school finance suits that have to do against schools. I am not in favor of allowing I think what we need to do is to fund schools adequately so we can avoid this. But there's still the potential of lawsuits, whoever's on the court. But I do think most of the reasons why the Supreme Court is being challenged doesn't have to do with education. It has to do with one, the car case out around Wichita where the Carr brothers brutally killed 5 people, and the case was overturned by the Supreme Court. Also, there's another piece having to do with the appellate court, and that has to do with partial birth abortions or dismembered abortions. Those are the big issues around that. But as far as schools are concerned and the courts, we need to adequately fund schools and to get the courts out of the business of schools. And unless the Kansas Constitution is amended, we are going to have that issue. You know, I feel like that, you know, the formula that we have, well, we don't have one right now because we're on the block grant, but there's things that can be tweaked when we come up with a solid school funding formula. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Howell, please describe your position regarding the use of tax dollars to support educational opportunities for Kansas students both before and after the traditional K-12 experience. For example, preschool, all-day kindergarten, and institutions of higher education.
Well, I certainly think Kansas is a very strong role to play, particularly state government, in supporting both what we call pre-primary and post-high school, post-secondary education, particularly when it comes to our technical colleges, our higher education systems like KU and K-State. And unfortunately, with the current Brownback tax plan and his allies in the legislature has let those very programs down. One particular programs I'm familiar with is the group called Parents as Teachers. Basically an opportunity where folks can identify little ones before they enter in to kindergarten, basically with potential challenges, needs that need to be addressed. The legislature used to fund this program. That's a example program that has had those services slashed dramatically. Once again, because the governor's allies have chosen to take, in essence, 1/12 of our state income tax and direct that towards tax cuts instead of funding core vital services like parents as teachers and our higher institutional system. So the state, Kansas really has a strong role to play. We need to put people back in the legislature and see the value of those institutions. Because let's face it, we're in an economy now where basically education is continuing throughout one's life. We all know that work environment is a dynamic place. People need to be constantly retooling their skills and learning new things to survive. And Kansas needs to be promoting that, not being a hindrance.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Branson, in May, Kansas reduced some criminal penalties for marijuana possession.
I'm asking slowly so the light can get down here.
Please discuss your priorities as it pertains to drug abuse and offenses in Douglas County.
With the last legislative session, it's true that Kansas legislature reduced penalties in second possession of marijuana cases. The priorities I view in our office is fairly simple and straightforward. One of the things I first look at, and I believe that our attention should really be focused at, is prevention. And unfortunately, through the last several years, we've not been interested in that. We all know that the war on drugs started in the 80s. It did nothing but increase incarceration rates and make a situation that's untenable. The process I think that we have to really start looking at and focusing on is continued prevention. And one of the things that never ever gets funded is prevention services. So the view we take in our office, even though marijuana remains illegal in our state, there are some states that have made it legal. There are some public opinion is starting to wane on our desire to incarcerate people. We try to look at marijuana possession cases simply as any type of other addiction case. Is this a situation where this person is out committing crimes? Is this a situation where this person is addicted? We have to strike a balance between addiction and the criminal behavior, and the preference is to try to get the person some type of treatment and counseling and help so that they are not ending up in our jail system. We typically look at possession cases as addiction cases and hopefully treat them as such by use of diversions or other type of
Thank you, sir. Sheriff McGovern, at least 32 states have enacted stiff criminal penalties for assaulting healthcare workers. Kansas is not one of them. Please discuss what your position is on how Douglas County can balance the rights of the healthcare-seeking public with the safety of healthcare providers, particularly as it relates to mental health and substance abuse patients.
Wow. You know, it's kind of like law enforcement, and it's kind of trying to assault law enforcement is like public safety. I mean, when you're attacking healthcare workers or assaulting healthcare workers, those are the people you're supposed to trust. And for us to not put that support on it is kind of ridiculous in my view.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Brinson, as County Commissioner, how will you promote economic growth in Eudora and of businesses in Douglas County that do not fall within Lawrence?
Repeat the question, sir.
As County Commissioner, how will you promote economic growth in Eudora and of businesses in Douglas County that do not fall within Lawrence?
Good question. Once again, I would have to go to the city and both people to see what are they looking for to be brought to their city. Being someone who's not from that academic background, but do have a passion to want to see people have the resources, needs, and entertainment that they would want in their city, it would be something I would first want to collaborate and dialogue with them about, both from the city side and from the community side, to see what would better benefit them. That's something that's necessary.
Thank you. Before we get on to Commissioner Thurman, just a reminder, if anybody has any questions out there on the cards, make sure you raise your hand so they can come around and collect those, because we're going to put those together during our break. Now, Commissioner Thurman, as County Commissioner, how have you or how would you promote a balance between business and agricultural needs of the area with the need to protect our local natural environments and resources?
So, as I said in my introduction, being the rural voice on the county commission and having an agricultural background now for 16 years helped me understand what an important role agriculture plays in Douglas County. A lot of people see our farmland and think of it as just waiting for development, and that's a wrong view. That it's agriculture in Douglas County represents $42 million worth of product being created here and sold on the market. That can be anywhere from corn and soy and milo and all the crops you see in the fields, but it can also be specialty crops like fruits and vegetables. And there's a growing array of things that are being grown in Douglas County. We're building a strong local food economy, and there are also growing relationships between our conventional farmers and our smaller producers. So that's really important and oftentimes overlooked part of Douglas County that I feel real passionate about. On the business end, I have really enjoyed these last 8 years connecting with Eudora on economic development. I have a strong working relationship with the city manager and assistant city manager, Barack Matite and Leslie Herring. I've worked closely with the mayors over these last few years. Actually, since the beginning, there's been a lot of turnover at your city, but lately, working well with Rick Hughes and John Fiore, although I know he's not here anymore, and Tim Reason. It's a great city to work with. We've done a lot. We have E-Community, which is responsible for a couple of new businesses in your community through a revolving loan fund and some help with Douglas County. We paid $50,000 to help you all have a retail market study, which actually has led to some real progress in that field, and quite a few other things, but I just ran out of time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilwoman Reed, SB 45, which was passed by the Kansas legislature and signed by Governor Brown back in April of 2015, allows for the concealed carry of a firearm without a concealed carry license. What is your position on how the state should balance rights protected under the Second Amendment while protecting its citizens from gun-related violence? Specifically, how much control should businesses, local governments, campuses, and school districts have over the allowance of weapons in their facilities?
Okay, so I am a supporter of the Second Amendment. I grew up with hunters, I grew up with guns in my house, and there are currently guns in my home. However, I see no reason why someone should not be trained and licensed to conceal carry. And I also don't see any reason why background checks shouldn't be required for anyone who wishes to buy a firearm. Guns on campuses, that was mentioned in this question. That is of grave concern to me. My husband is a university professor, and I also am employed by a college. And I believe that guns on campus open up a whole new world of danger that we don't even want to get into. As far as local governments, this is also an issue we are dealing with on city council. I'm figuring out how to keep people safe, yet balance that with the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Carlson. By some estimates, Kansans are sending $1.9 million per day in taxes to the federal government, which could be returned to the state if it would expand Medicaid. The total federal dollars that Kansas has declined by not expanding Medicaid to date is in excess of $1 billion. What is your argument for or against accepting these federal dollars to expand Medicaid?
With respect to expansion of Medicaid, I think that's something that we need to seriously take a look at. Am I for it or against it? I think we need to put it on the table. And I think it needs to be, there's certain stipulations before I would consider it, and that would be first, it doesn't cost Kansas any money. And secondly, we have an opt-out clause. Because, the Obamacare, you hear different pundits talk that it may be imploding any time, but I feel like that if we were to consider it, it needs to be not even cost to Kansas, and at the same time, an opt-out clause. And there were 3 bills last year was proposed and discussed in the Kansas legislature. They never got to the floor because the speaker did not allow them to get to the floor. In fact, there were 3 members of the committee who lost their jobs because the speaker removed them from their positions. Last week, when we had a candidate forum similar to this in Lawrence, John Wilson, who's a representative from the district just south of here, talked about, he's a Democrat, he's running unopposed, but he talked about the need to have a moderate leader in the Republican Party House of Representatives member. And in essence, he didn't come out and endorse me, Jim Carlson, but he did endorse the fact that the Republicans need moderate leadership. I could bring that potential of moderate leadership to the House of Representatives if elected.
Thank you, sir. Senator Holland. In March, the legislature and Governor Brownback enacted a law allowing campus clubs and groups at universities in Kansas to limit their membership to like-minded individuals, and that the universities would still be required to fund those groups. Proponents of the law say it protects student religious freedoms. Critics say that the new law will sanction discrimination not only against gays and lesbians, but potentially based on race, gender, or disabilities. Please discuss your support or opposition to this law.
Thanks for the question. Very good question. I opposed that law. I voted against it. I'm probably the latter camp. I believe that would, in fact, foster discrimination.
That was fast. I remember sat with a bunch of politicians who hardly take most of their time. Okay, now we get to hear from each candidate so they can add in some comments, rebuttals to questions asked other candidates, and closing summations. We might touch on some more of these questions that we've asked with other candidates in our Q&A portion as well. Each candidate will have 1 minute. We're going to start off with District Attorney Branson.
Well, being unopposed, I guess my questions have been fairly easy, I would say. Again, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out here and being a part of this programming process. You know, the privilege of being able to vote for candidates or vote for one of us up here shouldn't be taken for granted. I want to commend Jimmy Shue for his efforts to remind people of their ability to go out and vote. Please exercise your vote, even for us that are unopposed. You still have the right to vote for us one way or the other. We serve you every day, and we are graded by you only when our time expires. So it's your opportunity to speak out and make sure you're counted. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff McGovern.
Should I just pass it and read the record?
Well, I don't want to end this forum at 8 o'clock tonight, so I'm trying to say at least something.
Thank you for coming out. We hold our staff to high expectations because we know you hold us to high expectations. There's issues that we're dealing with, we deal with it. But we also hold these guys and gals to come out and visit the public and bring back information and share with us how we can do a better job. We say we always do a great job, but we can always do better. So if you ever have any issues with us, both positive and negative, please come see us. One thing that we have done over this 7th class is a sheriff's office citizens academy, and that is open to the public. Sorry, I think you guys, back row, you can get there too. But is that we have a citizens academy to show you what the inner workings of the sheriff's office is and what you pay for and what we look like. So if you're ever interested, please join the website.
I just enjoy talking to the sheriff's office and not having lights and sirens in my rearview mirror. Mr. Brinson.
As I've said, that I would want to represent the voice of the people, and that's just not voters. That's, in our sense, the people who come in on the issues, but on both sides of the issues. And one thing that I've heard Sheriff McGovern said is he wants more beds. And when I think about the coupling of the jail expansion and the mental health crisis prevention center, the Kern County has, have had a chance to decouple that. And as I went door to door, people asked, both here in New York, both Baldwin and Baldwin and Lawrence, why are they coupled together? People are seeking alternatives for the money that would be spent towards that jail expansion. Our crime rate has dropped significantly in our county, starting about 2014, but yet our inmate population has increased. There's questions about that. But also, what are the mental health crisis prevention center? What are some proven services that we're planning to put in the mental health crisis prevention center?
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Thumb.
So I'll respond to that. So our bookings over the last few years and these years that we're talking about the jail, the bookings into the jail haven't really changed. So activity out in the community in terms of police and sheriff's activity is about the same. We do have a higher level of felony inmates staying in the jail because the state has squeezed the courts, it's squeezed the lawyers, it's squeezed the mental health system. It's taken a lot longer to get people from their arrest to their trial, to their hearing, to through the court system, to their sentencing, and to finish their sentence. So because, frankly, some of the state's behavior has caused the county to have to make adjustments in its own plans for how we take care of the system. It's on us, it's on Douglas County to take care of our inmates in the best possible way. It's a really complicated topic. 1 minute isn't enough. My cell phone number is on the Douglas County website. I'm happy to talk with anybody about it over a long cup of coffee because that's what it takes. It's not a soundbite and it's not enough to do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilwoman Reed.
I haven't had much of an opportunity to talk about school funding, but I do want to let everybody know that I am a strong and unwavering supporter of public education. I know that it is the bedrock of what we need to move forward as a state, and that every child in Kansas deserves opportunities to have a quality public education. In order to do that, we do need to have a fair and equitable funding formula that is fully funded. Since 2012 and the tax policy that was enacted and the revenues that have been coming up short, it has affected all of the schools in this district in many ways. For instance, in Eudora, I know that the library sometimes closed due to lack of library aid. The debate program was cut and fees have gone up. And the long and the short of it is until our schools are fully funded, we are going to pay more and get less. And I do want to address real quick what Jim said. I am the moderate in this race, and he has claimed to be the conservative.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Regarding the school funding that Kara brought up, I agree, we do need to have a formula, to put a formula in place. The block grant was put in place because the state couldn't afford to continue the formula as it was stated. I have expertise in working in school finance. I'm familiar with the school funding formula, and I feel confident that I could be an asset in the state legislature. And I'd also like to point out regarding the, my website has some endorsements by former president of school board, former KNEA and UNICEF directors that endorsed me, that have worked with me, that know my background, that understand how I work with people and how I have a background of bringing people together in controversial issues. So please visit my website to see those.
Thank you. Senator Holland.
Thank you. I want to have more time to speak about K-12 directly. Unfortunately, I didn't get questions addressing that, but here it goes in a minute. Make no mistake, our current K-12 funding formula issues at the state level are self-induced. Sam Brownback's disastrous tax policies of 2012-2013, as has been stated earlier in this forum, is the cause of why the governor and his allies chose to deep six the formula and instituted a constitutional block grant funding scheme. Now, make no mistake about this. The legislature looked back in 2001 and did an Ogg-Meyer study. You know, the legislature knows what it costs to fund an adequate and equitable education in the state of Kansas. The issue is are we going to have elected officials in the Kansas legislature who truly are sworn to uphold the Kansas Constitution and specifically defend Article 6 when it talks about the legislature making suitable provision for funding. That's what this comes down to. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I don't think you have to worry, considering we're here in a school building and there's a lot of school district employees sitting in the room. I don't think we're done talking about school districts. Thank you, Senator Holland, and thanks to all of our candidates for your responses. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. We're going to give the candidates a moment to stretch up here. Our fine assistants are going to be gathering all those questions that you hopefully wrote down on cards because it's your turn to ask them questions. Okay. I have what everybody wrote down here on the cards. These are not in any order whatsoever, so we may skip back and forth between topics, and we may skip back and forth between candidates too. Let's start off with our county commission candidates. Can you talk about your plans or ideas for improvements, improving access? I hope everybody had good handwriting too. For improving access to mental health care in Douglas County, particularly as it relates to crisis care. Mr. Ransom, let's start with you.
All right, thank you. First of all, my plan would be to gather people in the mental health profession. As like I said, going door to door, some of the people that I've talked to, some of the things they would like to see is proven services that would work for our county to improve our county and its mental health. I would like to see not only the training that CIT that has went to some of our, at least there in Lawrence, police officers there, but continue that training and adding first responders to that. I think there's a different mindset that happens when a cop who could be trained in CIT shows up, but then there's a first responder who is not a law enforcer. I think it helps to de-escalate the situation a little bit more. I would like to look at and see where the various Valero Institute is not only succeeding, but making felony there to see what tips we can get from them, but also see where else we can go to begin to bring about better services for our community. I can't get past this enough as if anyone's here that would know what youth ministry is, you know that it's not just about that team, it's about that team and the culture they're growing up in. And so what I've come to realize over 12 years of doing youth ministry is really understanding people. And so we got to get to the basic where we're putting our resources in the people, not only the people that are needing the services, but the people who have to pay for those services. And so that would be nice first step, hearing what they're asking for, and then dialoguing and communicating with both programs that are near and far to bring about.
Thank you. Commissioner Feldman.
So, over the years that we've studied this, I can tell you that teams from Douglas County went to the Vallejo Center in Topeka, went to the Special Mental Health Crisis Center in Kentucky, as well as San Antonio and then in Kansas City. We've studied best practices for mental health crisis centers, and we've come up with a design and a plan and a program, and are working on the operational costs right now. For a center that would be a community-wide mental health crisis center serving all of Douglas County. It would provide sobering, detox, and up to 14 days of inpatient care provided by professional staff, psychiatrists, directors, social workers, case managers, peer counseling, all of the kind of best practices in mental health crisis care, and then transitioning into local outpatient care and services. We're also working on doing the basics of trying to replace those funds and those programs that the state has cut. This county has seen millions of dollars cut from our mental health agency, Bert Nash. We've done the best we can to show money into the gaps this year, $150,000. Years before that, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We fund $500,000 worth of RAP services, which means in this school, in your high school, in every junior high and high school in Douglas County, there's a psychologist, a counselor ready to identify special needs in kids at the youngest age possible. We'd like to get those into elementary schools as well. I haven't done that yet, but that's the goal. So access to mental health care is absolutely critical. It would help if we had a state who would support mental health services, but since they don't, Douglas County is committed to do the very best we can with what we have, and we can do a lot.
Thank you very much. Here's a question for the House candidates. Do you support public tax dollars being given to private K-12 schools in the form of tax abatements in exchange for student grants or other forms of private school payments? Ms. Reed.
The short answer to that question is no, I absolutely do not. I believe that tax dollars should not go to private education. Additionally, I am not in favor of keeping the tax relief for private school scholarships.
Jim? Since we got the mic down there.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to respond that I do not support vouchers. Now, the question was asked regarding the support of there was a bill that was passed in 2014 and another one was, I think, expanded in 2015 that had to do with at-risk students. Those are students that are on free lunches in low-performing schools where scholarship. I did some checking through the legislative research, and I, talking to the Kansas State Department of Education. There's a little information out there at this point. I under No Child Left Behind, which are not under now, students that were failing were attending schools where they were failing. They were allowed the opportunity to attend a non-failing school in that district. And as I said, I need to find out more about something that if students are in failing schools and the schools are not improving, I think the school, we owe it to the kids and the parents to give them the opportunity to get into a school that will work in order to help them succeed, whether that be a public school. And as I said, I don't know what it's costing right now, but I'm committed to do my research to find out how we can help support kids. The last 6 years I've worked in low-performing schools since I retired as superintendent. I do know there's ways that low-performing schools can improve, but there's still a lot of schools that aren't performing.
Thank you. Senator, according to the Blue Ribbon Task Force, Kansas has a teachers shortage. More specifically, teachers are leaving the profession. How would you combat the teacher shortage in the state?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, when you look at the actions of the legislature these past 2 years, you really got to ask yourself, is the legislature in fact trying to encourage our brightest and ablest to get into the teaching profession, or are we trying to drive them away? Just some things that I think, when they may sound good, I have some particular concerns with. There's some legislation talk about so-called innovative school districts. This thing I'm particularly concerned about because I think the fact that with programs like that, I know they're meant to be bringing some outside folks from outside the real world to help teach. But in essence, I think what that does in fact is it starts to discourage and value the work of basically kids getting their teaching licenses here in the state. Another thing I think that the state has done to really discourage folks getting the teaching profession, and I believe very strongly about this, is when the state were to strip away due process rights of teachers. In particular, I know a young man very close to me over a number of years. I saw him basically grow up, go through high school, become a teacher in the state of Kansas, and ended up going to Missouri that's what he did this past fall, because he felt that Kansas no longer was a supportive environment for him to develop as a teacher. And so I really think that we need to look at some of these policies that's coming out of the legislature and ask, what's the mission here? Because quite honestly, when we had Sam Brown back and was allies of the legislature, to me they're trying to, in essence, to impede and inhibit public education in the state, promote private school alternatives. I just think that's the wrong way to go.
Thank you, Senator. Jim, this one's specifically for you, but I'm going to turn around to Kara too as well. How would you change the Constitution regarding schools?
How would I change the Constitution regarding schools?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Because I feel like that the writers of the Constitution had the foresight to see that schools need to be equitable and adequate. And I use the example of, back, if we were to look at the schools across the state of Kansas with school districts, if we turn them loose, the school districts, and Karen mentioned earlier, you shouldn't your education should be based on zip code. But in Galena, Kansas, the school district in Galena, Kansas, one meal brings in $17,000. In Burlington, which is Wolf Creek, one meal brings in $400,000. That's why I feel like that we need to have an adequate and equitable clause in the Constitution to be fair to kids. There's a lot of conversation around big schools and small schools. We've got 286 school districts in the state of Kansas. The average student population of the school district is 550 kids. We in Northeast Kansas are very fortunate because we have, for the most part, growing schools. It's the other 3/4 of the state where student enrollment is slipping. We need to keep, I feel, as I said earlier, the Constitution what it is.
Thank you. Karen, I want to give you a chance to respond to that as well. Would you change the Constitution?
I would not change the Constitution. Both equity and adequacy are incredibly important to our public schools. All of the schools in this district do benefit from the equity clause in the Constitution, and that is very important to all of our schools. Additionally, I would go one step further and say not only does the Constitution
been involved in this. What qualities do you possess that makes you better qualified than your opponent to represent our district? Let's start with Commissioner Fallon.
Well, I don't know that we have difference in qualities of character or anything. I think Jesse's a great young man, and I'm sure that he's got a full heart for this work. I can say I've been doing this work for the last 8 years. I've developed a lot of relationships. I have a lot of history working for Eudora and for Baldwin City and for Lecompton and of course for Lawrence and the rural communities in between. I come at this with a strong sense of community, and that's, it includes business, it includes social services, it includes an appreciation for quality of life, like you all in Eudora have just determined that you want your quality of life to include great trail systems and parks and rec and all of that. The thing I think that makes me a good commissioner is I'm continually fascinated by what people are doing. I have a pathological liking for meetings. I like to go to meetings. I like to see people work with one another. I like to listen. That's one of the things Jesse is doing. He's doing a listening campaign, learning about the district. Well, I've done that for the last 8 years and several years before that. I've learned a lot, but I'm still learning. I love knocking on doors and seeing where people are. And when you do that, you see that in our county, there are people who are doing very, very well, and there are people who are doing very poorly. They're doing everything in between. So what I bring to the table for Douglas County is perseverance, intelligence, an ability to work with people, a heart for people in their worst days and their best days. And at this point, I bring a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of how the process works in local government, which is takes a lot of time to learn, and it's incredibly important for the Douglas County Commission right now.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Ms. Young, for those comments. Over the last 12 years, that's what I've done in youth ministry, trying to figure out how this young man or young lady can improve their life, what steps they need to take, and as I met with that kid, I met with that mom, that dad, it was just that ends with, you know, what are we going to do? What's our next step? How are we going to do that? And so like he said, like Ms. Bellman said, I am someone who can listen, but I'm also someone who can guide, give suggestions, cast a vision, really bring a hope to a situation. And so that's what I've done for the last 12 years. And just the ability to see and want to defend the orphan, the widow, the disenfranchised, the unfortunate. That's what my heart is. That's what it's been for the last 12 years. And those are the qualities that I seek, that I work at, and people testify for. So that's what I have.
Thank you. We're gonna start with Jim on this question, but I want our two other, our House candidate and our senator to weigh on this one too. Would you vote to lower the state sales tax? And should sales tax be collected on groceries?
Would I vote to lower the state's sales tax, and would I remove the sales tax on groceries? We can't vote out sales tax until we balance things. We need a top to bottom look at all the taxes that come into, that our state receives. Right now, we're lopsided. You know, a lot of people compare to it as a three-legged stool, property taxes, sales taxes, and well as the income tax. We've got two legs that are existing on this stool right now, and the other one's lopsided. We need a top to bottom review of all that comes in. And when we can get that straightened out, and we do need to get it straightened out, I would reduce the sales tax on groceries, because it's an inordinate amount for people that can at least afford it, need to pay the most. So I do feel like we need to do that, but to do that, we have to look at the total structure. And in a state like Kansas, we need all three of those, the legs on that stool to be equal. We also need to not only look at the money that's coming in, we have to look at what's, the expenditures that the state's making. The A&M study, which was done within the last year or so, which is Alvarez Marshall, did a study, and they projected that $2.1 billion could be saved in the state of Kansas over the next 5 years. They made over 100 recommendations, and looking at those recommendations, those are tough bullets to bite, I'll be honest with you. But we need to take a look at them, at least to put it on the table, because we need to look at what's coming in and we need to look at what's going out. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Then we'll go to the senator.
So the question, if I remember correctly, was lowering sales tax and eliminating grocery tax.
Correct.
Okay. So the first thing, again, I would address is to make sure we have a revenue issue in this state. There are potentially, as Jim mentioned, efficiencies that could be found, but the first thing we need to look at is the revenue. We need to look at the 2012 tax policy, and we need to repeal some of those tax cuts. When the revenues are coming in, and we can find places to bring more money into our state through a variety of ways, I do believe that sales tax should be lowered. It is a disproportionate tax that affects lower income families more harshly, and that needs to be lowered to be fair. Everybody needs to pay their fair share, but we shouldn't be penalizing those that are going through difficulties. I would like to see that grocery tax eliminated, again, for the same reason, to take some of the burden off families who are struggling the most.
Senator, I'd like to get your opinion on that as well.
Thank you. Regarding the first one, I vote to lower sales tax. My answer would be that eventually. The second question, we vote to lower the sales, eliminate the sales tax groceries on food. Yes, I would move on that immediately. As a matter of fact, in this past legislative session, I introduced a constitutional amendment in the Kansas Senate that would basically phase out the sales tax on groceries over a 3-year period. Many of you probably noticed, but it's worth repeating again. In certain communities in Kansas, folks are paying the highest sales tax rates on food in the nation. Is that ridiculous or what? And then when you look at our tax policies, which obviously with Governor Ryback and his legislative allies pushed through in 2020 and 2013, we have just basically major inequities in our value system, I believe, as far as what we consider worthwhile taxing or not. We have something called a small business non-wage exemption. That for tax year 2012 is worth over $200 million, in which 0.67, total filers, receive 43% of the benefits. So this was a $205 million tax package or gift, we want to say, to Sam's political interests, in which 2,200 filers received $87 million of that deal. So it's Charles Koch, it's David Koch, it's the big business interests here in Kansas, who are making off with vast portions of these unfair and equitable tax cuts. How can we justify a lawyer paying no income tax, or a doctor paying no income tax, or anybody, including people like myself, who have non-core business interests set up, from paying income tax when their W-2 employees are paying income tax? Simple and unfair.
Thank you. Look, since you got the microphone, Senator, I want you to keep it, we're going to kind of come down the line there a little bit. Obviously, school district financing is probably the most important thing in front of the legislature, probably for the next several years. What other priorities besides school funding would you like to champion in the Senate in your case?
Well, do I have 2 minutes? Okay, so what I think you're seeing, the reaction from voters across the state of Kansas, just in the Kansas Senate, okay, we had 8 of Sam Brownback's conservative Senate allies retire before they even wanted to face a primary vote. We had another 6 of his allies who went down in flames during the primaries. He's lost 14 of his conservative friends. Why? Because Kansas voters are upset. And when you talk to those voters, and believe me, I've got an earful, okay, when I go door to door. You want to do something fun? Knock on somebody's door and say, what do you think of Sam Brown back? And they either roll their eyes or they just start to unload on you. And this is independent of party affiliation. I kid you not. I've never seen an election cycle like this. So the number one priority when we talk about schools, believe me, public schools are very important because, I mean, that's over 50% of where our state general fund monies go. But it's really more in the context of a bigger picture. My objective for the upcoming legislative sessions to come is to put in a sane and rational, basically funding mechanism to fund core services. Because it's not just K-12 funding that's going, for lack of revenue. We have a comprehensive transportation program that the governor has diverted over $2 billion with a B, billion dollars, okay? And while, my opponent and folks on their side would say, oh, our finances are rosy, we want to create jobs. By gutting the comprehensive transportation program, we've lost nearly 175,000 jobs over this 10-year period that we're currently in because we're not funding core services and infrastructure. The number one mission we have is to get stable funding for the state to pay for core services. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Jim?
Well, kind of follow on what, Tom has mentioned, but also earlier I mentioned bring back luster to Kansas. And that has to do with, with schools. Having been, an educator for, 4 decades, Kansas schools have lost their luster. They're not bad, but we need to address issues around that. And school funding, with the formula that was brought in place in 1992, it's worked well. But we need to tweak it, to look to other issues around, looking to help kids and do what's best. As was mentioned, half of the state general fund goes towards education. But also, there's working with the aged. That's a serious concern that all of us will eventually have. But right now, it is a very serious concern because they've been cut back too, and we need to address that. Hospitals here and healthcare in the state of Kansas. I worked for 14 years in Independence, Kansas, and last year they had to close their hospital. 300 people were put out of work because they had to close their hospital. There's a lot of rural hospitals in our state that are holding on by the skin of their teeth. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. The transportation is potential. As was mentioned, we're taking significant monies away from it on a daily basis to fill holes. I am a conservative, a fiscal conservative. That means balance the budget. Okay, we need to balance the budget, not fill it from other sources that are one-time opportunities.
Thank you. Aaron?
So some of the other things, again, K-12 education is incredibly important to me. It is one of my top priorities. Fixing the school funding formula has got to take precedent over a lot of other things. However, mental health services, especially in this district, are a huge issue. Senior services, the way we take care of our elderly and our aging. Also, early education programs are incredibly important. Study after study shows that if good early education programs set students up for more success in life. So those would be some things that I would definitely want to champion and take a harder look at. Additionally, all of these things speak to quality of life issues. And when we're looking at increasing revenues in our state, one of the ways we can do that is to attract businesses to our state. In order to do that, we have to have a good quality of life. Good schools, good mental health services, good senior services, good early childhood education programs. All of these things are incredibly important, so they all have to work together. So it's difficult to sort of pick an issue, because they all really are part of solving the problems that we're facing in Kansas.
Thank you. This question started with this one. I'm going to go to our county commission candidates here. What projects besides the jail and mental health facilities would you prioritize, or what is a priority to you? So let's start with Ms. Bellman.
I guess I would count as one important priority to continue the sustainability efforts of Douglas County. When I came on back in 2009, I lobbied for the hiring of a sustainability coordinator. We now have one of the strongest sustainability departments in the state. Through that effort, we have the first food policy council in the state, which is now considered to be a model for the entire state, leading to 10 food policy councils and 10 more on the way. Those actually have a tremendous impact locally, both on food security as well as local agriculture and local economy. Creating a heritage conservation council, as well as creating a competitive grant program for heritage programs and projects. Eudora has benefited specifically from that program. If you look downtown, you see your Eudora Historical Museum in the core of your downtown. That's largely because of the heritage program that allowed seed money for very substantial renovation, which is helping to lead to kind of resurgence of life downtown. The community program has done the same, helping to bring training and small business funding to entrepreneurs in Eudora. So I guess that there are different ways the county can impact people's lives. We pay a lot of attention to core services like public health, public safety, quality of life. I, in particular, am grateful to some great colleagues on the county commission. They have supported me in doing special new programs that bring another layer of quality of life, I think, to your community. I would just say one thing I'm going to keep an eye on is your new ambulance. We managed to get your ambulance after about 3 or 4 years of pushing. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, make sure that it's on time, fully staffed, and doing what it needs to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jesse?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Let's see. What projects besides the jail and mental health facilities would be priorities to you?
There's a thing called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that affect kids. And what that is, if a kid there's 10 of them, I don't remember all 10 of them, but there are things like physical abuse, sexual abuse, if their parents got a divorce, separation, about 6 other ones. They've experienced 4 of these 10 things. They are likely to beat that themselves as they grow older. So if they've experienced those 4 things: sexual abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, physical abuse, parents got divorced, they themselves it increases that they themselves will have a divorce, be someone who abuses drugs. And so with that, what happens is a kid, if they have an adverse childhood experience, when they go to school, when they attend school, their ability to learn decreases. And we all know, that the linking kids who perform low on state tests, you fast forward to 10 years and they end up in our jails. And so one of the things I would like to actually county, you the people, if I could spend time investigating, taking surveys of our different schools of where these kids are performing on these tests and where they're at. That way, not only do we continue to lower our inmate population and the crime rate as they grow older, but also that these young people begin to grow academically and can be citizens who graduate from high schools and from our technical school colleges and come back and be citizens who serve our community.
Thank you, sir. We're running out of time, but I do want to get to these 2 questions because they're rather important. They're 2016 legislature voted on a bill that would end the Common Core in Kansas with no plan to replace it. How would you have voted and why?
My understanding, according to KSB, is that Common Core had already been modified by the state. So I do think that it is a good idea for children who are traveling from state to state or moving, that they have a level playing field when they get there. For them to all be in the same spot at the same grade, I think is a great idea. However, Common Core came with its own set of problems. I think that the idea of it, sort of keeping things continuous across all 50 states, is a great idea. And again, I think that the modifications that had already been made to Common Core for career ready standards was good. So I don't know that I would vote to repeal Common Core as such, because it's my understanding that that didn't exist in that form anymore.
The standards that are used in the state of Kansas by the Kansas State Department of Education are called career and college ready standards. They're certainly patterned after the Common Core standards, but not verbatim as far as Common Core is concerned. They're only around math and English. But as was stated, I feel like that if a third grader is studying multiplication, two-digit multiplication in Eudora, and they move to Tonganoxie, they should be working on the same thing. I do feel like, with regard to standards, it needs to be more of a local control issue. If there are issues around, whether it be science issues, sexuality, where it's taught in the classroom, different things like that, that needs to be a local control issue. But as far as math and reading is concerned, I think we need to be consistent across the board. And another thing that concerns me around standards is we need to have standards that measure something other than just reading and math. You know, Randy Watson, who's the Commissioner of Education, he has Kansas Can, and which is a change going away from that, test that we give the kids every spring in certain grade levels and identify grade levels, predominantly in math and reading. But we need to be measuring something other than just standards. We need to be looking at soft skills. Can they communicate? Are they dependable? Those are things that we need to be teaching kids moving into the we're 16 years of the 21st century. We need to be addressing those issues other than just worrying about Common Core.
I have more cards here and more questions that we didn't get to in the Q&A part, but here's the last one of the night. With the task of crafting a new school finance plan and moving over this upcoming session, do you support a return to per-pupil-based state aid system? Jeff?
Do I support a per-pupil state aid system? Yes, I support a per-pupil state aid system. Currently, not currently because of the block grant, but prior to the block grant, we had the FTE, which is full-time equivalency, and then we had waiting, whether it be bilingual, free lunch, transportation, special education. Those added to the amount of money that was received. And I continue to think that we need to have a program like that. 2 weeks ago, a man by the name of Colonel Alexander, who is a prominent professor in the area of school finance, was at K-State. He spoke there, and he indicated to them, and I read his works over the years, that Kansas has a model of school funding formula. I think we need to get back at it, but I also think that we need to look at something I spoke earlier in the previous question, and that is looking at how we can help students in other things, around the soft skills, other than just, giving tests, or in math and English and science and other things. But we need to help our kids be prepared for the future. And I think the funding formula needs to reflect something along those lines. Their career and technical education is also waiting, but we need to think outside the box when it comes to a new formula, but the basics is around the FTE.
Thank you. Tara, you get the last word.
Okay, use it wisely, I hope. The key elements of any school funding formula, obviously first must address equity and adequacy. From everyone that I've spoken to, from educators to administrators, that 1992 school finance formula was a good one. The problem is complex, and there have been some criticisms of that formula that it was too complex. But from what I understand, with a little bit of looking at it, it is not too hard to figure out. And I trust that the professionals that are in charge of running our schools have the ability to do that. And the important thing, again, about any formula is that it does address both equity and adequacy. Base state aid per pupil, I think it is important to stay with that model. It has dropped about 13% since the high of, I think it was 08, 09, but costs have not dropped. So again, it's so important that we fund our public schools the way they need to be funded, and base state aid per pupil is a good model to do that.
Thank you. We want to thank all those who submitted questions here tonight. There were some great questions in there, and it's pleasing to see so many thoughtful people engaged in our political process. Now it's time for some final thank yous. First of all, how about a round of applause for all our candidates? We also want to thank our sponsors who helped make this event possible, the Eudora Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Eudora Chamber of Commerce, and most importantly, Game On for Kansas Schools. Make sure when you go out and spend that hard-earned money of yours, you think about supporting the merchants and services right here in Eudora. Shop Eudora first. Thanks also to the Eudora School District for the use of this fine facility, and the entire staff of the Eudora Middle School for their help in preparing for our visit, and the students also from Eudora High School that helped out this evening. Thank you all. There's also a person who's been sitting right down here in the corner most of the evening. He's kept us on time tonight. Ryan Plate, thank you very much. And finally, and certainly most importantly, I want to give a very big thank you to Becky Plate from Game On for Kansas School. Becky's a volunteer for the organization, and she spent hours and hours of time and put in a ton of effort to make this event happen tonight without a hitch. She's the one responsible for making it all happen. Thank you for your work, Becky, and thank you for caring about Kansas schools. The candidates do have some literature out in the hallway, I believe. You might want to learn a little bit more about their perspectives from that literature. Election day will be Tuesday, November 8th. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Advanced balloting begins next Wednesday night. Wednesday night, right? I think so. Mr. Shu, I think is already left. Next Wednesday. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for watching us on the World Wide Web. Don't sit on the sidelines. Make your choices. Go out there and vote. Have a good evening, everybody.